Welcome back to Orange County's Real Estate Hot 30. I'm Lena Fayyad.
And I'm Holly McDonald.
So, welcome back to our second virtual podcast. And we wanted to bring to light a few things lately. Now, with the coronavirus, we discussed, and just kind of the biggest mistakes one might run into during this time and how we can avoid them. So, number one, Holly, how are you doing? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Today we're going to bring you some tips and tricks that are pretty much timeless. So whether you're looking to buy now in the midst of this crisis that we're in, or you're going to buy later down the road, these are things that are going to help you throughout. And, we'll apply some of it to what's going on in today's market, but regardless, it's going to be helpful for you, your friends, your family members. So just take these things, keep them, store them in your memory bank. They may come back to help you out later on, and you will thank us.
Awesome. Yes. So, number one, let's talk about price and what that means in today's world, given the circumstances. And, the price is right for a reason. So, what does that mean for a seller nowadays? Now, if they're thinking to list. Go ahead.
Yeah, price is one of the most important parts of real estate, obviously. I mean, it's all about the economy and how much is a buyer willing to pay for your house. And that is essentially what your home is worth. And if your home is listed for the wrong price, if it's too high, of course, that's the worst case scenario, because when it's too high, you're typically not going to get buyers that are interested in coming to see it. They may think that you're Fruit Loops, you're out of your mind. They will not be as interested. And as a result, with buyers not being as interested, your home will sit on the market longer. And the longer your home sits on the market, the more people are going to think there's something wrong with the property, or they're going to start to think that you're desperate. And that's when you're going to get lowball offers, which you don't want. Nobody wants that. So being priced too high, definitely a huge negative. I know sometimes sellers will chase after a high price that either they've come up with from somewhere, or that somebody may have misguided them and insinuated that their home was worth a higher price. But the fact is, reality is your friend. You do need to have a reality check. If your price is too high, the market will speak. And this is a slightly different market, of course, where it may take a little bit longer in some instances to sell your house, because we're just having, it's a little bit more complicated to view homes right now, of course, with shelter at home and people not really going out as much. And, we're doing things virtually, but of course, it's a very good helper, but it's not exactly the same as going into your house. So that, of course, is going to most likely.
I agree. I really think time really kills price. I do agree with that. And, with all the homes going on hold, I'm sure you've noticed too, just, given the coronavirus. And so the days on the market, there was a big going back and forth between the association and a lot of, the listings going on hold, and how that affects the days on market. So, I like that outlook. So what can we expect now with I would say, price reductions? How can we give a more realistic outlook on that? And does that mean, people are seeing price reductions, people are willing to put lower offers? So does that drive the market down? Are we looking on a downward spiral, some would say?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. I mean, it's possible. And the market does tend to go up and down over the course of history. What goes up comes down, then comes back around. So I don't know where the prices are going to head just yet. There have been some price reductions. I've been tracking the market daily. There have not been as many price reductions as you would think there could be, given the circumstances. I think we're in a pretty healthy market to begin with. And the fact is we're probably going to be just fine. It's just a matter of time and seeing how things play out. If somebody needs to sell quickly, of course, a price reduction is great bait for getting a buyer fast. I mean, that's one of the quickest ways you can sell your house, is drop it to a price where people can't resist it. But I haven't seen as many price reductions as I would have thought. And actually, I've been tracking the homes that have sold too. And remember, a home that sold probably went into escrow about a month ago. So it was pretty much pre-coronavirus. But even with that, many homes have been selling for above the list price. So I think the next couple of weeks will really be a good indicator of if that has continued to happen, if that's still a trend. But I think at the end of the day, you want to price your home right. And the flip side of pricing your home too high, of course, is pricing it too low. And pricing it too low can also lead you to troubles because you are possibly going to get buyers that try to drive the price up, and that's not necessarily a bad thing for the seller, but it does lead the seller sometimes wondering if, you know, if they priced it way too low and they should have started at a higher price to begin with. So I think those are things to take into consideration as well. I mean, if your strategy is to price low to get multiple offers, that makes sense.
Great, absolutely,
Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. So, so that was number one. I would say price. Our second topic, I would say, is marketing and showings, and we touched upon how that's changing. You know, given the market lately. So, you know, I'd like to chime in a little bit just because I feel like first impressions are key, and from just my personal experience, buyers, I still feel like will want to go out and still visit. Like, for example, my buyers always go back to their first memory of walking into that home. That's always they go back to that memory bank in a way. So this might change now that with everything turning virtual. I still like firmly believe I feel like buyers are going to be divided, especially those that are visual and kinesthetic, that would want to see and touch the home in a way, you know, let me see, check the walls and look at the ceiling, little things. Oh, yeah. So that's kind of my personal outtake on that. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just as far as talking about how a home's first impression it could potentially be a big mistake for a seller to make. If your home does not give off a good first impression, your most in right now, your first impression is online, and it really has been for the last few years. I mean, if you are getting alerts, they're going to your emails, and you're looking at photos or you're looking at videos. That's your first impression, and from there, then you make the decision if you want to go tour the house in person. And Lena's right. Right now, seeing the houses in person, it is something that we are able to do, but there's so many precautions in place and so many people are concerned that they may not be going to see houses in person regardless.
No, I agree with you. And just going off that tangent of marketing your home, and I just, you know, the fact that real estate aspects are just, I feel, are still stuck in the pre-corona world, you know, one would say, like door knocking or sending out mailers for a new listing or putting it on, you know, Orange County's best magazines, things like that. So I just feel, you know, print marketing is definitely going to go maybe definitely change, most likely. And I just, especially as a seller, you really want to choose a listing agent who's able to list your home in a favorable manner, excuse me, and want to stand out amongst the rest of the homes online. So I would say definitely do your homework in studying those. You know, every home has a story, and I believe it's an art how an agent chooses to portray that. And this, you know, no right story is right or wrong. Every story is special. So
that's a really beautiful way to put it. Actually, you are right. Every home does have its own story, and it is our job to put it out there and showcase the, you know, all the great features a home has to offer. But I just firmly have seen it before. If a seller decides to post their home and not take advantage of the technologies that are out there, like having, you know, beautiful photography or great videos or virtual tours, especially in this day and age, they are missing the boat because buyers want as much information as they can absorb, especially right now when they're home and they have, you know, they have time because they're not running around looking at properties. They want as much of the experience as possible. So sellers, make sure that your marketing plan includes, you know, the full spread. And also, if you're, this kind of parlays into that point, when you're selling your home, you have to make sure it's accessible for buyers. Now, I know right now there's a lot of restrictions and it's complicated, and we do have to be, you know, putting safety first. But once we get past this, it will, you know, we'll go back to a normal sort of showing thing. And when we are doing showings, you know, for a couple of months, it may be a sacrifice to let people in the door and let them see your house. But if you want to get top dollar and you want to get people interested and in there, you really have to make the home as accessible as possible for whatever that time frame is. And then just realize that long term, that's going to help you reach your goal.
Absolutely. I like that. So that was the second segment. So number one was price. Number two, we talked about exposure of the homes, showings, and marketing. The third thing we wanted to mention was financing. Holly, what do we have to say about that? And includes loans, the expectations. I'll let you chime in first.
Yeah, okay. Loans. Oh my goodness. Such a big thing. Buyers, listen up. If you are getting a loan, you need to talk to a lender. I know so
We have
many buyers.
plenty of recommendations, by the way. Sorry to cut you off.
Yes, we can definitely post those recommendations. We work with some great lenders, but I've seen so many buyers make this mistake. I know Lena has too. Buyers will go to the internet, they'll type in their, their income, their budget, and come up with what they think they can afford. And while it's awesome that they are able to like quantify what they think they can afford, that does not necessarily mean that that's what a lender will qualify them for. So there is no point in looking at houses that you can't qualify for. So talk to a lender. That's major thing. Such a big mistake that people will make. And also, when you are qualified with a lender and you're going through the process, I've seen this happen before, so fair warning. Do not go make any big ticket purchases in that time frame where you're home shopping, because it will throw off the whole scale of balances if you go out and you say like purchase a car or purchase a boat or whatever. There's so many things you can buy that's like big ticket items that are going to ding your credit, and it can impact your ability to afford the mortgage, and it can just screw up a whole deal. And I've seen it happen before, and I don't want to see it happen to you. This is majorly important. If you screw up, because you didn't know, you could potentially risk your earnest money deposit if your loan can't go through. So you want to be really careful, because we don't want.
I feel like you're right. I feel like a lot of buyers think also when you go out there and open all these credit lines that it does increase your credit. Now, don't get me wrong, it does in a certain way, but like you said, it does raise a red flag, especially for first-time home buyers, in that price range, especially around here. So, like you said, definitely be careful. That's kind of my thought. So explain to me, lenders, I've seen buyers come to me with the online pre-approval and saying this is it, but then you told me this from when I started we started working. Read the fine print, because what do you have to say about that? And that fine print really goes far.
Yeah, and I just want to add in here that the points that we're talking about are actually points 3 and 4, because I kind of skipped ahead, but they both relate to buyers, and they do tie together really well. But regarding the fine print, I know a lot of buyers are very savvy that they want to get the lowest interest rate. And trust me, I get it. Your interest rate can completely, play a big role into what your monthly payment's going to be, which affects your budget. And those are very important, of course. But just because a lender touts a low interest rate doesn't mean that they are going to have low fees, or that they're not going to charge you points, or that they're not going to have some other strange requirement. So you really want to make sure you get all of the information up front. Find out, what are my closing costs going to be? What sort of reserves, which is like extra money set aside that they need to know you have as like a cushion in case you can't pay 1 month. Some of them are going to have that. I just had a client, they had to put very, very little down, so they were happy about that. They got a great rate, but they also needed to make sure they had money set aside for property taxes for the next several months. And that's, thousands of dollars here in Orange County. So
Right.
you need to make sure that you get all of that information from the lender, because, unfortunately, you don't want to be 2.5 weeks into escrow and find out that you have to pay, tens of $1,000s more at the end of the purchase than you were expecting. It's just a big shock and can totally be avoided if you ask these questions up front.
No, absolutely. And it really leaves a bad taste, in whether someone's buying or trying to invest in something when they find this so late. And we've seen it, both of us, happen so many times. And, some lenders are great, in my opinion. Some are hard to work with. So you really want someone that's can communicate really well with you just as a buyer, really develop that relationship, I believe, with the lender, to get all. And I've seen cross qualifications, especially with the corona lately. For some reason, I'm seeing buyers are not open to that for some reason, and I'm just wondering if they're afraid that their credit will be ran again, or someone else is digging into their info. So
Yeah.
what do you have to say about that?
With cross qualifications, there's pros and cons to it. Um, especially right now, you are correct, and possibly in the, in the future as well, depending on how the market shakes out. Sellers are going to want as much confidence as possible that the buyer has a solid loan, and that's understandable. Um, Now, some buyers don't want to necessarily let another lender get into all their personal stuff because, just like you said, maybe it will impact their credit if it's run again. Maybe they just don't want someone they don't know and trust looking at all their, private financial documents. I get that. And I've had buyers push back on that in the past, and sometimes it's been fine, and sometimes they've lost the house. And so you really have to know, what your line in the sand is. What I've also advised people to do sometimes when they are a little nervous, and sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but if they have their lender reach out to the lender that's doing the cross qualification, and kind of they can do their lender talk and go over everything. Sometimes that will suffice. Sometimes they just need a little bit of extra assurance, and just make sure that your lender is not somebody like propped up in a telephone booth that doesn't know what they're doing. So I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that, you're solid.
That's absolutely right. And guys, if you have any questions or would like those recommendations for lenders, we know some great ones out there. So please let us know. We'll write the info below. DM us, send us all your questions, and we'll send you all the recommendations. So going on the fifth and last point, since we kind of combined all this topic to the 5 most important things to try to avoid in the real estate market mistakes. So number 5, I would say, is fact checking. What that means is know who you're working with, know your agent. Keep in mind a lot of the media out there portrays a different image of what the real market is in Orange County. And I believe, Holly, you were on television, and, you were on a real estate actual show. So of course they don't show you all the details on there. So the local market's a little bit different, and Orange County has a special place, I say, in this little curve. Given that, I believe a lot of agents are tooting their own horn during this own time, which they should be. Not that, I am too, by any means. I'm trying to get business in such a hard time, but a lot of agents are not on Zillow. A lot of agents are, who do sell a lot of homes, are on these big websites, and some are not. So what would you like to say about that?
Yeah, I think just as far as a big mistake you can make, is just taking in the information that's put out there that may be geared at a more national audience. That it doesn't really paint the picture of what's going on here locally, just like Lena said. Our market is a cocoon. Every market really is a cocoon. And some markets are impacted differently by what's going on. I know some of the stories I've seen out of New York have said that this is going to be like the biggest crash ever in real estate. Not to put anything negative out there. Obviously, we're hoping that's not the case in Orange County. But you see a headline like that, if you generalize that and think that that's the case here, you could be really setting yourself up for, fear, disappointment. And if you're a buyer, you may be thinking that this is going to be your chance to swoop in and get an extreme deal, when maybe that's not the case. So just really find out what's going on locally and see how the market is responding. All it takes is really keeping track of what comes on the market, what's sold, and for what price. I mean, it's such a simple formula.
Yeah.
We can provide that for you. The other thing that I wanted to point out is there's a lot of people out there that are giving information to buyers and sellers that, maybe was true at one point or in a different market that isn't necessarily the status quo today. For example, I'll have parents tell their kids, you need to put 20% down. And 20% down is it's a good standard, but that's not necessarily what's needed today. There's lenders that can do 3% down, 3.5%, 5%. So depending on your situation, you may be able to get a house for a lot less than you thought, and it would still make complete financial sense. But you do need to be careful. I mean, you do need to find out what that all means and how that applies to you, and what that, make sure you're not just trying to buy a house and sell it in a couple of years, because most of the time that's not going to work very well for you unless you're a savvy investor. So those are some of the things. Like, that's a big mistake I've seen people make, because they think they can flip a house, or bank on the market going up or bank on the market crashing. You really need to look at what the market is now, what it is here, and really just go with your gut and follow through with what is actually happening.
Comparables, I think, is really, like you said, what we really have to stick by. Like you said, all the news media can say we're going down a spiral, but really what's around us, we're seeing closings happening. So we're following the chart every day of what closes. So I think definitely also check with your lender. Like you said, every loan is different. You want to put 3%, and like you said, real estate, a lot of it is outdated. So I would say I don't say listen to your parents or not, but ask a lender, go out there, question the lender, see what you can get out of them, see what you can work out. And you'd be surprised. A lot of my buyers actually qualified for a lot more than they thought. And that's why we went out there. And then, the Corona hit, unfortunately, but they were really surprised. They loved the lender we work with. Shout out to Mark. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions. Holly, do you have anything else you'd like to chime in? I'm going to kind of put all this together in the link in bio. We'll update the YouTube guys. So let us know if you have any questions or comments.
I could talk about this topic for days. I've seen so many situations that could have been avoided, but honestly, everybody has a different course and path that they take when buying and selling a home. Our job is to just try to help steer people in the best way possible so that they can avoid making some of these mistakes. But these are some of the biggest that we've seen. So just to review really quick, two of the things that we see with sellers is 1, ineffective pricing, 2, poor marketing exposure. For buyers, we see that they don't necessarily pick a lender that's really going to work well for them, or that is really meeting the needs that they think they have. Also, big ticket purchases are no when you're in escrow. And then finally, looking at the local market where you're buying and looking at what is happening there versus looking at the national market and headlines that may not apply to you. I think those are there's some big key takeaways that you can probably get from this. But like Lena said, I mean, with coronavirus, of course, some of these we have to tweak a little bit to make sense to what's going on in the market right now. But honestly, these are timeless things. They will help you whether you go to buy and sell in 2 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. So tell your kids, tell your friends, tell your coworkers if they're looking to buy a house or sell a house. These are some things that they definitely want to take into consideration.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time. This was really fun, and hopefully we can, next week, we can come up with some exciting things for our buyers and sellers out there. Thank you for watching Orange County's Real Estate Hot 30. I'm Lena Fayyad.
And I'm Holly McDonald.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.